Hey, welcome to this short video. In this session, I'm just going to demonstrate how to connect the Elektron Digitakt and the Access Virus synthesizer so you can run a completely doorless session between the two devices with the Digitakt operating as the main controller and everything running over MIDI into the virus. A couple of points: I'm not a pro YouTuber by any measure. I'm just doing this because a couple of people on TikTok asked me how to get this setup working. I guess another thing also is that this is a technical demo today, so whatever we create today isn't necessarily going to be particularly musical or sound that great. That's not what this session is about. This is purely a technical implementation and configuration demo to show how to get these two things working together. I'll try and keep it short. If you have any questions, feel free to just drop them in the comment section below, or you can reach out to me on TikTok or Twitter or somewhere, and I'll do what I can to help. Okay, so yeah, let's just crack on and make some noise.
First of all, a little bit about how I'm set up. The Digitakt has a standard MIDI cable here connected to the out port on the Digitakt. That is simply routed into the in port, the MIDI in on the virus. In terms of MIDI configuration, if I go into the MIDI config section here on the Digitakt, dive in, what you can see is all the sync settings are set to send and all the receive settings are turned off. So that means that the Digitakt is going to be the main controller for this session. In terms of port configuration, I'm not using USB, so I've got you can choose MIDI or MIDI and USB on the output setting. Just make sure that's not set to USB because we're not going to be using USB for this session. And just in general, when I'm running doorless, I just make sure all the USB cables are removed because everything on my setup, all the USB connections are pulled into a central hub, which then connects to the laptop. And if you do have something running on the laptop, you can end up with MIDI data flying around the place and just things get confused. So we're fully detached here, running on a local MIDI network, if you like, between the Digitakt and the virus. And the channel settings, you can just leave them on their default values. You don't have to do anything there for now. Over here on the virus, as you're probably aware, you can have the virus in single mode or multi-mode. Whichever one you've got selected, it'll show at the top left of the display here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put it into sequencer mode, which means pressing these two together. If you look underneath the multi and the single keys, I've got the TI2 desktop model here. I expect other ones are the same, but you can just see in faint blue text it says sequencer mode. Right. I have to press these two keys at the same time, and then it will switch over into sequencer mode. Now what that means is that I have 16 channels now exposed within the virus. Each one presents is kind of presented as a part. You can see the part number here. Okay, and each of these parts is addressable over MIDI via the MIDI channel that matches the part number. So on MIDI channel 1, I have this program. MIDI channel 2, I've got this program. MIDI channel 3, I've got this program. Part 3, part 4, and so on. You can reconfigure that on the virus, but I suggest you don't. It's just going to make life confusing. So back to the Digitakt. You might remember that these first 8 tracks on the sequencer are for the purpose of sequencing sounds and samples and producing sequence tracks on the device itself. The second bank of 8 tracks is used to sequence over MIDI. So each of these can sequence a separate MIDI device if you want over a different channel. You can configure which channel. I'll show you how in a second. You can configure which channel each of those tracks is going to be communicating out over. So if I start off by taking track 9, Right. So this is MIDI track A. It's communicating over channel 1, MIDI channel 1. I can change that using this potentiometer here. Right, you can see the channel number changing, but I'm going to be organized. I'm going to make sure that this one is on MIDI channel 1, MIDI B is on MIDI channel 2, track C is on MIDI channel 3, track D is on MIDI channel 4, and so on. Okay. The next thing to be aware of is that this potentiometer here, and just if you're not aware, these 8 potentiometers control the values that are displayed on the screen here. So they match positionally. So this one will adjust this value, the second one will adjust that second value, and so on. Now when you're talking to the virus, this 4th control will adjust the program on the virus. So you can see it's set to 9, some arbitrary number. As I scroll that, you can see that let me just get that to show, yeah. So you can see that the selected patch, the selected program on the virus is changing on part 1. Yeah. So I'm now already in a position where I'm able to, from the central Digitakt unit, I am able to control what's happening over on the virus. Okay. So part 1 is set to play this sound. Okay. So I got a very, very simple sequence, just these 3 notes on a repeating 16-step pattern. Now, I may want to control some other things as well. So let me move through a few of the other options here, just on this one track. I'm just going to drop the volume a little bit on the virus. Right, so on the Digitakt, when you are MIDI sequencing, these screens or pages serve a slightly different purpose to when you're on the main tracks. So if I go into the amp screen, I can see 8 little boxes, and it's not very clear what they are, but what those 8 boxes are is they are giving me an opportunity to control CC values using these potentiometers. So if I wiggle this one here, you can see that number changing. Okay. And what that says is that I am now setting potentiometer D to control CC value 70 or 67 or whatever I choose. I can do the same for this potentiometer, for this one, for this one. So I can set them all to control different CC values. But what does that mean? I'm just going to go over to my laptop screen. I've just pulled up this page. You can Google for this. This is the list of what all of the different CC parameters will control on the device. Okay. So if I simply want to control the volume of that patch, that would be CC value 007. And maybe I want to play with the filter cutoff, that would be 040. Right, so I can simply set those up. I'll show you how on the Digitakt now. Okay, great. So I want this to be set to 07. Like that. And I want this one to be set to 40. I think it probably already was. Okay. Now that that's set, to actually use those controls, I have to be on the filter screen. And here you can see what the values are set to. So look, this is now my volume controller, right? This is CC values number 7. Cool. There's no audio here. This purely sending volume control information over MIDI to the virus. Yeah, that's nice. Same with this cutoff. Remember, I'm not using the filter on the Digitakt. I'm controlling the cutoff over on the virus by having this value set to CC40. Get the idea? Well, that's pretty cool, because then I can maybe attach that to an LFO. Should we give that a try? Let's take this LFO here. Okay, so now I have that LFO attached to CC value 2, and in here I can see that CC value 2 is set to 40, which as we know is the cutoff. So this is now being controlled by the LFO. Okay, that is really all you need to know. Let's add another channel. I'm going to add another track rather. I'm going to add this track. Let's get that enabled. Let's go onto that track. Hit the source tab. It's assigned to channel 2. Over here on the Digitakt I can see the sound that's selected on channel 2. It's program number 40. So this one already had those CC assignments made, so I was able to dive straight in and pick up the volume on that track. Interesting. Just bring in some percussion. Very menacing sounds here. This is just a demo, right? Okay. Let's bring in another track. Okay, so MIDI C. Onto the source tab, it's assigned to channel 3, that's great. Let's move the virus over to part 3. Actually can't hear this one, so let's just mute some stuff. Sure. Okay, whatever that is. Nothing really to speak of. And this is where you just start consuming loads of time, because you go into audition mode. And here we go, start scrolling through sounds. Ah, maybe some strings. I think I just need that to run ever so slightly longer. Yeah, okay. I'll have some strings. noise is basically it. We're making some noise. It's all being controlled by the Digitakt. Really not doing very much at all with the virus over here. But if you wish to still can use all of the features of the virus. You can use the mod matrix, you can use the effects, you can play with your delay and your reverb on any of these parts. And it will just work. I hope that's useful.